Well, kids, welcome to another episode of Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. We always ask you to go on and subscribe because when you do, you get to see really cool guests like my next one, who my good friend Dave Tedder introduced me to. I have Andy Haught from the band Zeroking. How are you, sir?
Doing great.
Good, good. So, what's your weather like down there today?
A little bit overcast. We're expecting some rain later, which is good. It'll cool things off. Hadn't been too hot today, but we've had some hot days recently.
Yeah, you're part of the world is quite humid in the summertime, correct?
Yeah, it is.
Right on. So tell me about Zero King. Dave's been bragging you guys up a little bit. Unfortunately, not enough to give me a file that I can open. But no, I'm just kidding. But so tell me about Zero King.
Yeah, we're a hard rock band. We definitely touch on some metal. Um, Most of what we do has really big like 80s style choruses kind of. But we sound more modern than that. But we're definitely kind of geared like an arena hard rock party.
So I'm going to guess you, and I mean, we never ask anybody to reveal age on this show, but I'm going to guess you and I are of the same vintage. We probably grew up on the Motley Crues and the Rats and the Van Halens and what have you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
What?
And then on to the 90s, with your Metallicas and your Megadeths and your Panteras and White Zombies and
Uh,
Marilyn Manson and stuff like
we
that. So
we
yeah, definitely kept growing along the way, but those early influences are all there, Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, even Poison maybe.
it was Poison. But you know what? Here's one thing about Poison that I've never seen them live other than on video. And Ricky Rocket is actually a very good drummer that a lot of people don't realize the guy can play.
And CC DeVille's actually really underrated too. I mean,
Yeah.
and Brett's a hell of an entertainer. So
And Ricky can kick your ass because he's like a seventh degree black belt in some sort of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So anyway, that's for another day. I'd like to ask guys who kind of grew up in the same time as I did, because I mean, you'll remember the '90s were, depending upon where you lived and what you were going through, were not maybe great for some people, right? Because of the music shift and whatnot. So if you were playing a certain kind of music and you didn't kind of roll with the punches, it was tough. Why do you think this music is probably more popular now than it's ever been?
I think there's a generation where, the kids uh they might, not like what they're getting now. Because radio right now is just, pop mostly, and rap, as far as like the top 40 or whatever. And then, so they're getting on the internet and they're finding stuff that their parents were into, and finding that those were good songs, and those bands kind of stand the test of time. They've got good material, and there's many of them are still great live. So
Yeah, and I mean, to me, it's a little different than like people. I mean, I have kids, and my oldest son is into hip hop, but he also loves the stuff that he grew up listening to because of me. That's
right.
a little different than a Kardashian wearing a Rob Zombie shirt just because it's cool and hip, right? I mean, it's like the kids actually do enjoy the music.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and going back to the 90s, you're right though. It was definitely a tough time. If you were into metal and you weren't into the grunge scene or the alternative scene, then you were pretty much the uncool kid on the block for sure. And the funny thing about that is that's right when like say I graduated in 92. So my first bands, 92, 93, I'm growing up on this like MTV dream.
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
wanting to play not necessarily the hair metal, but just the metal stuff of the day.
Yeah.
And you find yourself in a situation where, that's just not the cool thing to do, but I always stuck with it anyway. So
Well, and I mean, I always joke around every time I hear "It Smells Like Teen Spirit." I always say that's the sound of the first phase of my music career dying. But anyway, that's for another day. Um, so Zero King has been together how long?
we started in 2004. That's when the band started. And the core of the band's been the same the whole time. It's been myself, my guitar player Shane Day, and my drummer Chris Webb, and we've had rotating bass players. But the bass player we have now, he's been with us since about May, but we've all played with him in other bands, collectively, and so, in some cases together, going back probably 30 years. So even though he's new, it just feels like family. We've all known each other since the 90s. So,
And isn't it funny? I'm up here in Canada, you're in West Virginia, and we all have the story of the rotating bass player. We don't know why that is. It's just something that happens. So
I think part of it is like the three of us have such like history with each other, um, that it's hard for that other person to crack into that. And the reason it works with Mike is because he also has that same history. So, um, it's funny, we joke about him being the new guy, but it's like, yeah, he's the new guy since 1993. But different bands, not this band necessarily.
and chemistry is important. People don't understand. Chemistry is a huge part of, I'll take somebody that's maybe a little less musically inclined than somebody else if they're a good hang and they're easy to work with and they just show up to win.
I mean, that's a big part of it, is just being able to get along, and sometimes out on the road, that can be a trying situation.
Sure.
So you want somebody who's going to be able to keep their head about them, and and not be a problem as far as the band dynamic.
Absolutely. So 2004. So I mean, that's not, it's a good pace. Has the band kind of stuck with the same, I guess, format and formula in terms of songs and songwriting, or have you evolved, or how's that gone for you?
I'd like to say we've evolved, but I mean, we certainly have that same core, high energy rock and roll, big choruses, try to be catchy, that kind of vibe. But we're also not afraid to like step outside the box and do a slower song, or a more ballady type song, or just a weird sounding song or something. We have a lot of different influences, not just the hard rock stuff. There's a lot of pop influences. Like, everybody in the band pretty much was into Prince and Duran Duran and Michael Jackson and all, NXS, and a lot of those like big pop bands of the 80s. So we kind of draw from that, plus all our hard rock influences and our metal influences. And
It's interesting that you said, because I mean, I remember liking Duran Duran when when I was younger, and guys, and Prince, and I remember all my Metallica friends at the time. The first Metallica album comes out, and it's humid hot in the summertime, and they're all walking around in like the rocker leather jackets, and I'm not cool because I'm wearing shorts. But to hear you say that, it's refreshing, because I mean, that was a band that really, you're starting to really hear some of their influence on bands now as it's happening.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think MTV was just really instrumental in our generation, having a pretty wide palette. Because you'd have Headbangers Ball, and you'd have Yo MTV Raps, and you'd have 120 Minutes, and you'd see the pop, and you'd see the rock, and you'd see dip back into the classic rock stuff that maybe we didn't weren't exposed to, based on whatever your parents were into. Like my parents weren't particularly into much rock and roll, but they did turn me on to like early Black Sabbath, and Chicago, and Boston, and Styx, and some of those classic bands from the 70s and stuff. So
Fantastic. Look, we're gonna step away. We're gonna pay a few bills because, hey, we're an okay business podcast, but you still got to take care and keep the lights on. So we're gonna be back with Andy Haught here after this.
cool.
Welcome back to Rimshots with Sean. I'm here with Andy from Zeroking. And so Dave, every time Dave Tedder gets a hold of me, it's never because nothing's going on. He's always like, "Do you want to talk to these guys?" Because what's going on with you guys coming up? I mean, look, the summer's we still got a few weeks of summer into the fall, all kinds of stuff. But what's going on with you guys?
So we've been promoting the American Savior record, which we put out I think in December. And we've been playing all over the place. Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, of course. We've got a few things coming up. We're playing Milligan's in Owensboro, Kentucky this Saturday. We've got a hometown show in Charleston on September 23rd, Charleston, West Virginia, at the Blue Parrot. And then we got a couple things in October where we're going to be going up to Detroit again, playing the Diesel, big Halloween party up there, and playing the Music Factory with the Lonely Ones, which is a side band that Marty from Bobaflex fronts. So that's exciting because we've known the Bowflex guys for years. They're from our area. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but and really we're kind of pulling back on the shows a little bit because we're starting to go into writing mode and kind of like look towards our next. I don't know if it's an EP or a record or a single or what it'll be, but we definitely want to write some new stuff and get new product out there.
So since and it's funny I'm saying since everything opened back up, because I mean it's been over a year and a half. You're getting these people that are now following the news going, oh, they're talking. There will be no more lockdowns. Anybody locks anything down, they're just absolutely insane. So we'll just leave
Yeah,
it at that.
let's hope that's not the case because
Well,
that was a tough year and a half, or for some people probably 2 years.
it was, and it's really funny because they're getting ready to name streets after people up here, and I mean the way they handled it was silly. But anyway, I'm not going to crowd the interview with that. What's the scene like down there for you guys? I mean, it sounds like you're playing, a wide sort of area. So what's the scene like down there for you guys?
So in West Virginia, there's only a few places to play. There are some. Whoops, sorry.
That's all right.
There. Let me get you back on the screen. Okay. Yeah, West Virginia, there's only a few places to play. A lot of what you have around here are cover bars, where they want you to play classic rock and top 40. And we're not averse to doing some version of that.
Right. Is it
Play
like is it like what we used to do where we'll introduce a song as like here's a new one from Motley Crue, but it's actually your own tune?
Well, no, I mean we learn covers and stuff too.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when we get those kind of gigs, like they'll be like, oh, you guys are too aggressive or too loud or too whatever it is, and so there are places that have us back, and like Milligan's is one of those. We're actually playing 4 sets,
Nice.
so it's a mix of originals and covers when we play that on Friday. But we'd rather just focus on the originals. But the money is from the cover gigs is what kind of keeps the whole machine rolling too.
Right.
Because there's not a whole lot of money in original music unless you're at a certain level.
Well, it's funny
Um,
because I have a friend that basically says, take the cover thing as, hey, basically to be a good cover band, you have to be able to cover an awful lot of different styles and genres and players, and so just take that as the whole learning experience that goes into the woodshedding to be able to play your own stuff, which you'll appreciate a little bit more when you
yeah,
do.
yeah. I mean, we cover everything from like 70s stuff to 90s grunge to newer stuff to a few 80s things. And yeah, I mean, we throw like heavier versions of some of the pop tunes that we like, and that kind of thing. So yeah, we cover pretty good ground on that. But like I said, we always throw in a couple covers even in our original sets just because they work. It's things that you can automatically get people involved in. Like we do Drowning Pool Bodies just because people go nuts for that song. And then we do a pretty heavy version of Working for the Weekend, Loverboy. Your
Oh, there you go.
Fellow
There you
Canadians there.
go. Yeah, from the other coast, but they definitely count. Um,
Yeah.
And again, I think it's kind of, the neck of the woods that I'm from, it's like you can't be a cover band and like you can't do the same. It's one or the other, which I think is a little bit silly because um if you're playing to an empty room, you're not getting your message across either way, right? It's kind of like you got to get the people through the door,
Yep.
and then once they're there, then you prove to them what you do and what you do well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, we even on the cover shows we mix in our originals, and we obviously sell our merchandise and our CDs and stuff like that. So yeah, that definitely gets us in front of some audiences and makes some opportunities to make some money that we wouldn't necessarily have if we were just doing originals as well.
Right on. I'm here with Andy Haught from Zeroking. So you mentioned merch. So is that a big money? Well, I don't want to say money maker. It sounds too so business like, but is that a very important part of what you guys do when you're out there?
Yeah, it is important. Sometimes you don't make money off the actual gig itself, and you just make your money off your merch or tips and things like that. So yeah, that's definitely money in the tank that gets you to the next place or whatever. And we're really lucky because our guitar player Shane, he has a embroidery shop
Oh,
where he does embroidery, he does t-shirts, he does design work. So like all of our merchandise, he's designed and printed in most cases. And if he hadn't printed it, then he's, used his connections with other shops or whatever to get it done. And then he's also done all the design for all the album jackets and all that sort of thing. And actually helped on some of the videos and stuff too, as far as like directing and some of his. He's a very cool person. It's pretty cool.
It's like we rehearse this because I always say shop local because it's very important, right? It's really funny how it's a different thing, but people will do the whole, oh well, I'll go on Amazon or I'll go online and find, but it's like, man, shop local because they'll take care of you, and if there's an issue, you'll be able to get it resolved. So good plug for your bandmate there. I'd be interested to know, as you guys are playing those shows down there, I mean, you're hearing things about venues trying to get cut of the band's merch and stuff. Do you guys run into that down there when you're playing?
No, not really. I mean, I know it exists. Usually that's more like the touring circuit, as far as like the bigger shows. I guess they kind of do a merch cut in some places. We haven't really run into that. I think the only place there's been some times when we played like some festivals and things like that we've had to report what we sold, and if we've made past a certain threshold, then they wanted a percentage or whatever. But yeah, I can tell from what I'm reading about the bands on the touring circuit, they're definitely getting their money cut into quite a bit. That's not too cool.
It's not. Look, we're going to take one more break, Andy, and we're going to come back and wrap this up and talk about some more Zeroking after this.
Okay.
So welcome back to Rimshots with Sean. I'm here with Andy Haught from Zeroking, all the way down in West Virginia. We talked about merch and that kind of getting grinded away from people. You guys have to go into pay-to-play venues or anything like that? I've talked to a number of people down in the States where that seems to be a very
done
prevalent
that.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we've done that. We've done the whole like, well, I'll say this. So when we were wanting to crack into the Michigan market, the only way we could really find our way in was doing some of those like pay to play things. But now we're starting to really work with some promoters and some bands up there, and not having to do that as much. And it was worth it to take the loss a couple times just to get circulating in that area, because we'd never, like, all the time we've been a band, we just now started playing Michigan like last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was always just a nut we couldn't crack for whatever reason. So we try not to do too much of that, but we will do it, if it's the right opportunity. And we've certainly done it, sort of a ticket share kind of thing, where we take a part of the ticket sales. Like say we're opening for a national or whatever, because I understand, like, these promoters, they're taking a huge risk, and so they've got to try to make their money back. Sometimes that's on the backs of the opening bands. And
you know what, though, you bring up a very good point, because I mean, I've had this discussion with certain people, and I mean, there was a day when bands used to get a rate. There would be, like, up here there would have been a music union where the bars would have had to pay a certain amount of money for the bands and stuff like that. And I guess I hate to say yesteryear, because it was before I even started playing in the bars and clubs, but it would be up to the clubs. Basically, the clubs would book the band, and all the band had to do was show up and play. And those days are gone. I mean, it's just, we all know they're gone, right? So where do you guys find the balance? I mean, obviously you're going to promote your own show, right? You're not going to do a show or get on a show and expect them to do all the legwork for you. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, it's totally a fair statement. I mean, we definitely do what we can as far as promoting on the socials and trying to get our friends out and the people we know in different areas. And if I can work some other angles, like if Dave can get us interviews with people in the press in the area, or something in a blurb in the newspaper, or try to get on a radio station, or college station, or whatever it is. So we try all those angles too. But it also, you want to know the promoters, like, actually promoting the event too. And I think most of the promoters we work with on a regular basis, they do that. They do a good job of getting the word out about the show. Because sometimes you play places and you don't really know anybody there. You're just kind of like, let's just wing it and see what happens,
Right. Yeah.
And we can always, hopefully you'll make that couple fans who tell other people, and that's how it starts.
Well, and I mean, yeah, you hope there's people at the venue, but I just find, some people are like, oh, well, I've even had this the last little while. It's up to the venue. And if you leave it up to the venue and people show up, great. I think I hate the word lucky, but you're fortunate. More often than not, that's not going to happen because you got a fan base and you got to let them know, they've got lives. They're not going to know everything that you're doing. So you got to let them know where you're playing, when, how they get there, where they get, and I just find sometimes bands really drop the ball when it comes to that angle on things.
It can happen for sure. I mean, some bands are better than others. We typically don't try to, like, if we play with a band and we can kind of tell they didn't really promote or they didn't do much, then that's probably the only time we really try to work with them. We kind of weed out the people who lazy, I guess,
Yep.
for like, or it's not always lazy. Some people just don't have the time to put into it to really. But even that's kind of a cop out. It's like you can do something. It doesn't take too much to get some social media posts out there, and we've got a
Well,
guy who does our flyers for us. So anytime I need a flyer or whatever, he's always right there to give a shout out to Digital Blasphemy, Larry
well,
Wilson.
that's fantastic. And you know what I mean? It's often been said people will do that which interests them. So it's like
Yeah.
if people aren't, I guess, doing that, and I don't, but the point of this segment here is because of the people that watch my podcasts that are local that sometimes go, oh, well, it's different. It's different where we are than it's pretty much the same everywhere, man. It's just different versions of the same kind of recipe, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are some places that have kind of a natural draw, but those are really few and far between. Um, we have played some places where it's like kind of the same crowd showing up every time because they just like coming to the bar or they like, the bands that play there or whatever. But yeah, it's not like it was. I remember, yeah, I'm dating myself here again, but the early 90s, when I first started playing, it it just seemed like you'd show up in a bar and it would just be packed because they all went to that bar like religiously or
Yep,
whatever.
yep, yep.
And that, that may have continued on into the early 2000s a little bit, but, by probably, I don't know, 2008, 2009, that whole thing kind of died. And I don't know if there's probably a couple of different reasons for that. I mean, I'm sure the internet, and just the fact that at one point it was like, go to a movie, go see a comedian, or go see a band. That was pretty much your options or
Right.
whatever. And then once the whole like streaming thing hits and people can just stay home and watch their favorite bands on YouTube or stream movies or whatever, that certainly cut into it. And then I think around here, like this area got hit really hard by the whole like opiate thing. Um, and it hit a lot of different people. And I think that kind of when people got wrapped up in that, they stopped being a social, maybe. I don't know. I always, used to make the comment that you gotta put down the pills and get off the couch to get out to the rock show.
Well, that's the thing, man. And I mean, when you do get those people that come out, I'm a big believer in, you got to put on a show, right? I had a funny, our band was playing one time and we went and we did a set. And then this guy comes up to me, he goes, you know what? He goes, you look like a band. I can't tell the difference sometimes between the guys eating chicken wings and the guys that are playing on the stage. And his point was, people don't put on a show, and you can put on a show when people are coming there. Give them something to remember, correct?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I interviewed Dee Snider in college, and one of the things he said to me was like, "You've got to play like you're playing Madison Square Gardens, no matter what you're doing.
Mm.
If you're playing to the bartender, you're playing a packed stadium. It doesn't matter. You've got to put on that same show because you never know when that one person in the audience could be like telling 50 of their friends. They could either say, "Man, this band was boring as shit," or
Right.
this band was amazing and there was nobody to see it, but we've got to go see this band again. So I think I've always kind of just played to that idea. Like I always, people are like, how'd you put on such a great live show or whatever? And I'm like, in my head, it's Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. And people appreciate that. Look, we could do this all day, but obviously you're busy. So where are my viewers going to find out about Zeroking? Where can they get your music? Where can they follow you? Where are they going to find you?
Okay, so the easiest way to connect with us is our Facebook page, Facebook.com/Zeroking fans. We're also on Instagram, which I think is Zeroking Band Official. We're on YouTube. So check out our videos there. That's also Zeroking Official. All of our music, the 3 albums we've got right now, they're all streaming on all your favorite sites: Spotify, Apple Music, I don't know, Tidal. Wherever you stream music, we're there. Amazon Music, any of that stuff. Yeah, just if you haven't checked us out, give our record American Savior a listen. Check out some of our videos. We've got a cool video for a song called Back Off. That's the lead single off the record. And it's a fun video that we used a whole karate dojo in it, from like age 7 to age 21. The 21-year-old female that's the lead in the video, she's a karate champion from Detroit, Michigan. Her name is Kaylin Kowalski, and she competes everywhere, all over the U.S., Vegas, Florida, Minnesota. I've watched her compete on ESPN too. That was kind of neat, seeing somebody on television like, oh, she's in our video. and then we've gotten to know her family when we go up there too. They're really supportive of us up there. So
well, and they know that their daughter can take care of herself if a bunch of band guys come around her. So there's no threat there. She
can kick all our asses.
So I want to thank you so much for doing this. It was very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
Best of luck with those shows coming up, and we shall chat again soon. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.